This is Conversation Balloons, a podcast of interviews with experts and friends about all things generational. I'm your host, Leah Farish. This episode is brought to you by the Herzog Foundation, and we want to welcome Jen Sey to the show. Thank you for coming on, Jen.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
We're going to be speaking about children in sports first and how that experience can become counterproductive and even abusive. Jen was a child athlete par excellence, the U.S. Women's All-Around National Gymnastics Champion in 1986, and a 7-time member of the U.S. Women's Gymnastics, the national team. She has since written a memoir about all that, and that is Chalked Up, which I marked up myself. It was a powerful read. She produced an Emmy Award-winning documentary about sexual abuse of girl gymnasts called Athlete A. There's much more to her list of accomplishments and tribulations, but let's get going talking about kids in sports. You started out as a little girl just loving tumbling for the fun of it, but your heart is, you have a lot of drive, don't you?
You might say that. Yeah.
And
I started gymnastics in 1974, so just 2 years after Title IX passed. And my dad likes to tell this. I feel sorry for my parents. I was just such a driven kid. I don't think there was any stopping me. And this was before. I mean, this was in the 70s, so it was before girls were in sports in large numbers, and it was before parents were trying to get their kid to be serious by the age of 10 and pick a sport. Kids were playing little league and doing sports recreationally, and I was just like, this is all I want to do all the time. I just loved it. There really isn't anything more fun for a little girl than flipping around, and I mean, it was the best. And you had Nadia Comaneci in the Olympics, who was only 14, so that really resonated with little girls. And it was just a little after Title IX passed, so there weren't that many sporting opportunities for girls. You didn't have a soccer team everywhere, but gyms were popping up everywhere because of Nadia, and I loved it. I mean, I loved it for over a decade. It's an amazing sport.
Yeah. Well, what did parents and coaches in your life do to handle the drive that you had, and how did that all go wrong?
Yeah, it started out great. It didn't end all that well. I'm still grateful for the time that I had. I mean, I think, credit to my parents, I think without a roadmap, they were just trying to support me, and they were just, I wanted to do gymnastics all the time. And if I said I wanted to go to a better gym, they would help find a, gym that had higher level athletes and more national team members. So I think my parents were just so supportive, and there really, like I said, wasn't a roadmap. And I had a coach from about the age of 9 to 13 who was an amazing coach. My mistake was wanting to leave her. I'll just say that. She helped me qualify for the elite level, get on national team, and I was just so ambitious that being in the top 10 was not good enough for me. I wanted to be in the top 6 by the time I became a senior. And so I left her gym, and she was a coach in every sense of the word. I mean, she understood that sport was just a way to develop young people into strong and resilient adults.
Mm-hmm.
That was her mission. She was kind. She pushed us, but never abused us. She wanted us to find the best in ourselves. And then I left that club and I went to another one. And that was really where the coaching became incredibly abusive emotionally and physically. And there were sexually abusive coaches on the staff as well. And by emotionally and physically, I mean, we were weighed twice a day. We were screamed at to lose weight by any means necessary. Our weight was announced on the loudspeaker. We were called fat pigs. I was forced to train on a broken ankle for 2 years. Food was grabbed from our hands. The name calling is, some people say, oh, that was just tough coaching. No, it wasn't. That was emotional and physical abuse. And there were no pedophiles on the staff, and they were known as good coaches. So you were just supposed to not say anything and avoid them. So when I went to this gym, I kind of handed myself over. I thought, this is the thing I want. I want to be in the top six, and they got me there. And they did not care about the whole child. They did not care about my mental or physical health. I was, became severely anorexic, um, was training on broken bones, which causes tremendous mental distress over time
Oh,
and emotional distress and depression. And, after about 3 years there, I just completely unraveled and fell apart. And, I think gymnastics is particularly bad. It's very kind of outdated in terms of the coaching approach, and just, sort of hammer it into these girls, and if they can't take it, then we'll just move on to the next one. No care at all about the child. And it's particularly bad because girls are quite young. So I really struggled and ended up, despite my successes, leaving the sport utterly broken and suicidal, essentially, because
oh my.
I just hated myself so much. I felt like such a failure. So
Well, I was heartbroken to read that process. And where do you think parents now can draw
yeah,
lines?
I parents ask me that all the time because I'm not anti-sport. I'm very pro-sport. I think, a lot of what I was able to shape, my own natural tendency towards being competitive and hardworking and resilient, that got sharpened in sport. I believe in all of that. Even for kids that don't compete at the highest level, you still get all those things out of it. If you compete on a team, you learn how to be a good teammate. Like, these are all really valuable life skills. And unfortunately, my two young children play sport, and I see parents on the sidelines every day that I'm like, you're forgetting about the humanity of your child, and you're forgetting about why we do this. We do it so that they learn all those skills so they can be productive adults with self-esteem and confidence. We don't do it so that they can win trophies at the Olympics. The likelihood of that is slim to none. If that is what you're betting on, you are going to be disappointed.
Mhm,
It's like a million to one, so they forget, though. They get too close to it. They see some talent or spark in their child and they get wrapped up in it. But for those that retain distance, just pay attention to your kid. You can see it. Your child. Driven is fine. Serious is fine. Miserable and depressed, injured constantly, those things are not fine. Watch the coach. Ask them their philosophy about coaching. Do they care about the whole child? Why do they participate in coaching sports? Is it to develop all those skills, or is it to make champions?
mm,
Um, I think it's important to understand. I think you can find a coach that fits that model of developing the child and building all of these skills. And believe me, there's a lot of bad ones out there. And you can find another one. There's a lot of good ones too. So that's what I tell parents, is pay attention to those things. And if you're prone to getting swept up, check yourself. This is your kid. They're going to be an adult far longer than they're going to be a child. And you want to have them be able to make that transition to an adulthood with confidence,
mhm,
right? Not having been torn down by a coach in a sport that they will not play past the age of 20 something. I think about it a lot with my children. The relationship you're building with your children, you're going to have a much longer relationship with them as an adult, with
mhm.
them as an adult, than with them as a child.
So true. Preach. Mhm,
Yeah, and so it sort of changes the lens, I think, with how you raise them. You want them to be an adult with strong opinions and values and confidence, and for it to be a relationship based on mutual respect and love, not you kind of forcing your will on them. you
mhm.
know
Yeah.
so I don't know. I think parents pay attention. That's all. Ask the coach. Don't scream from the sidelines. I mean, half the time when I'm watching my kids play soccer, I have to stand so far from the parents because they just misbehave so badly.
Oh,
I can't be anywhere near it. Anyway, that's my thoughts.
well, that's some hard-earned wisdom, but I'm sure that it's useful to you raising your own kids and, managing their life balance. I think of your book and that early part of your life as being all about balance
Yeah.
and imbalance, literally, physically on the bar and everything, and also just your overall life. You know, my my son went out for football at a pretty football-oriented school, and after a few weeks in, training in the 100-degree heat, he said, "I think I wanna quit." And I said, "Okay, you can quit, just I'm not gonna go in and tell your coach." He asked me to go in and
Oh,
I
yes.
said, "No, you go in and tell him you're
Good
quitting."
move.
He didn't quit
Yeah.
he went through the whole season after all. But
I think that's
he was
really
kind of
smart.
at the other, end of it, like, should I continue? Is this, the best work-life balance for me? But, um
That's a good point. I mean, one of the things for anyone that has more, I have 4 children, so they're all different. And what you don't parent each child the same. Some of your children might be like I was, and you need to pull them back and remind them to have a life and to have some balance. I'm not good at balance even as an adult. Some kids you have to push and say, no, you have to finish what you started. I mean, my rule is if you start the season on a team, you have to finish. You can leave after that, but you have a commitment to the team and you have to. And then my other rule is, yeah, if you want to get out of it, you have to tell the coach.
Mhm,
Or, along those lines, one of my children, when he was younger, was upset with a grade and he wanted me to go talk to the teacher. And I said, absolutely not. You go talk to the teacher. You explain why you think you deserved a higher grade or that you want to resubmit your paper or whatever it is. Like these kids today, it's not the kid's fault, it's the parents' fault. The parents do everything for
mhm,
the child and they are lost when they are 18 and go off to college because they don't know how to do anything for themselves. They can't do anything.
mhm. Well, one thing we haven't talked about on this show, and you certainly touched on, was the anorexia that you got, trapped in, which isn't limited to um,
No.
sports participation. I got to do some runway modeling for Neiman Marcus 100 years ago, and I was really, given kudos for my figure, which was 107 pounds at 5'9", and my my mother at the same time started dieting, and she was the
Mm,
best mother on this earth, but without realizing it, she was
yeah.
encouraging me to lose weight too, and, like, she handed me a piece of toast one time and said, "Do you want some fat on that?" I go, "Oh, we call it fat?" I thought it was butter, but it is fat,
Yeah.
and it can, especially a girl can slip into that body shaming so easily, and,
Oh, yeah.
I just don't know how you did it and how your coaches justified, trying to almost starve you when you need nutrition in order to perform at such a high level.
Yeah, I think, this was in the 80s. I think it was before people really broadly understood eating disorders and anorexia in particular. And I don't know if I would have been anyway. I mean, it was certainly the environment I was in. I had the personality of sort of type A regardless. But if you have adults screaming at you that you're fat all day, that'll do it.
I need to jump in here and tell you that Conversation Balloons is now part of the Herzog Foundation podcast network. The Herzog Foundation is dedicated to strengthening Christian education and helping families and schools pass faith and wisdom from one generation to the next. You'll still hear the same great commercial-free conversations, now supported by a foundation that shares our heart for truth and understanding across generations. You can learn more at herzogfoundation.com.
I realized somewhere around 25 that I was wasting my time worrying about the size of my butt and that it was stupid. I had sort of become a feminist in college and I thought, would you give this advice to, a female friend that you need to be obsessed with your weight? And I realized how much time I spent obsessing about it and that didn't leave time then to do the things I cared about and wanted to achieve in the world. And I thought, men aren't sitting around worrying about their appearance all day long. Their brains are free to go out into the world and do things. And so I sort of made myself stop because it felt at odds with my own values and how I thought of myself.
Mhm.
Um, I think there's less of it now. I think people see the signs more. In fact, I think the culture has swung a little bit too far the other way. People are so afraid of anorexia, and we've had this body positivity movement and healthy at any size, which I think is equally damaging, because morbid obesity is not healthy at any size. And so I don't know. My goal for myself is to not really think that much about what I look like or what I eat, and to just, fuel my body. And I think my mind and body are pretty healthy now. And I think, to come back to your original point about your mom, I think the most powerful thing you can do with your kids is just to model certain behaviors. If you model courage, they will demonstrate courage. If you model sane relationships to food and body image, they will also have a sane relationship to food and body image. Um, so I think it's just important to think about that. Parents think a lot about parenting today. I mean, arguably too much, but I don't think they think enough about the signals they send without how they behave themselves.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Well, I want to talk for a minute about the difference between a boy's experience at sports and a girl's. Um, I I love the moment in your chalked up book when you said you noticed some boys in a gymnastics uh, class near you. A boy failed to do the move, and he just got up and went, and his coach exchanged a high five with him, and
Right.
you know it was it didn't seem like that kind of pressure, but and how girls gymnastics really is little girls. She talked about them needing to be pixies, and
Yeah,
really boys gymnastics is just the on-ramp to men's gymnastics because they have to mature and get that upper
that's
body
right.
strength, and so it's not the same pressure for boys in gymnastics, is it?
No, and I mean, gymnastics is unique because I think in a lot of sports for boys, there is a ton of pressure. And I think the parents can go kind of crazy because if you're a boy and you're good at football or basketball or baseball or even soccer now, the opportunity to get a D1 scholarship to become a professional athlete, like, that is looming out there. It's very
Mhm,
unlikely.
mhm,
So sorry, parents, just because your kid's like in the top whatever in your town at 10,
mhm,
that does not mean he's going to be professional. So I think there can be a lot of pressure for boys in different sports, but in gymnastics, the pressure is all on girls. And I think the way that it was viewed for many years is that there's this very narrow window of opportunity because you needed to be prepubescent. That was the sort of generally accepted wisdom, not very wise. It is changing. I'll speak to that. But the idea was you had to be prepubescent, which is why some of the crazy weight tactics were deployed, because they would literally try to keep your body fat low enough that you would not get your period. I didn't get my period till I was 19. Um, so they were sort of pushing back on normal development. And there was a belief that, on part of the judges, that if you looked more mature aesthetically, you might get a lower score.
mhm,
Coaches believed that. It was just the accepted belief, and the parents came to believe it as well. And because of this narrow window of opportunity, it also created this problem where if you were injured, you didn't wait to come back into the gym. I broke my ankle. I came back 10 days later because you couldn't miss a season. You might only get 4 seasons
mhm,
if the window of opportunity is that
mhm,
narrow. So that's really changed. I think Simone Biles has changed that. I think she was 27 in these last Olympics. She's been to 3 Olympics. And
mhm,
so that should change. It should. The philosophy around coaching girl gymnasts, they can miss a season, let an injury heal. You don't have to stave off puberty through starvation diets. You can let the body mature and be stronger. So I do see some things changing. The problem is a lot of the old school coaches are still coaching and still doing the same thing. So my belief is we need them gone from the sport, all the old school coaches.
Is there any liability for them? I mean, we can talk about Larry Nassar and sexual abuse, but pushing kids to take these risks and if
Yeah.
there is an injury, I mean, at what point does the coach's judgment come into question?
It should always be in question. They're there first and foremost, as I said, to develop young people and to strong, confident adults. If you don't think that as a coach, especially a coach in youth sports, I mean, professional is different. You're there to win. I mean, I still think a wise coach will encourage his athletes, let them heal if they're injured. That's what's going to allow the investment to pay back, and it's obviously more humane. But when you're coaching children, if you're in it for any other reason than to help these children grow into strong, confident adults, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Mhm.
So starting in 2018, and it was sort of a response to the Larry Nassar abuse case. And for those that don't know, he sexually abused, doctor for Team USA Gymnastics, sexually abused, we think, over 500 young athletes under the guise of medical treatment over the course of 30 years. And USA Gymnastics covered for him. They destroyed evidence. He also abused athletes across sports at Michigan State University. So Safe Sport was established in 2017 or 2018. I think it might have been 2018. So this provides a mechanism for athletes to report abuse, which is good. We didn't
Yeah.
have one before, and we just thought
Mhm.
it was normal. And they're educated, or they're supposed to be. I don't know what happens, but they're supposed to be educated. All the coaches across sports are supposed to go through education about coaching that is not abusive, that actually is helpful to the child.
Yeah, it is
Um,
sexual harassment in their workplace too.
yeah, absolutely. The kids are supposed to be educated about what constitutes abuse, physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. The parents are supposed to be educated. Each of the individual sport governing bodies are supposed to implement that education. While I'm glad this mechanism exists, Safe Sport is 4 years behind on reports of abuse. That's how many there are right now.
That is really disturbing, Jen. Well, you have put your finger on something that really needed attention a long time ago. Uh,
Yeah, I think so I'm glad now kids understand what is unacceptable behavior, and I think they do understand it better now. I didn't think it was abuse. I thought it was tough coaching and that I was too weak to endure it, which
uh,
is really sinister and abusive in and of itself. So I think kids know and understand better now. I think parents know and understand, and I think there's a younger crop of coaches that understands as well. But there's still a lot of abuse out there, and Safe Sport does not have the resources to investigate all of it, and so there's still a lot of bad coaches out there.
Let me ask you candidly, uh, we are when you're in the international arena in various sports, you're competing against countries that don't have this ethic at all. Is it
Yeah.
how do we win against teams that are ruthlessly cultivated?
Well, one, I think that kind of brutal coaching and abuse, I think you lose more athletes than you gain.
Mm,
I mean, I could go up to I think I was lost to the abuse. I think if I had been allowed to heal and maybe eat a sandwich every once in a while, I might have been able to endure through 88 and actually go to the Olympics versus me completely unraveling and falling apart 2 months before the Olympic trials. I mean, I can name off the top of my head at least 30 high level athletes who were gymnasts who were breaking all sorts of records who just fell apart because of abusive coaching and were not able to get to the Olympics. So I actually don't think it's effective. That's the first point I would make. And the second is, what are your values as a country? What are our values? Is that what we care about more than anything? Are we willing to abuse children to win medals?
mhm.
I, I don't think that's who we think we are.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. You mentioned once, I can't remember if it's one of the interviews I've listened to with you or in your book or both. You actually at age 40 were having nightmares about gymnastics. What
Yeah.
what does a nightmare about gymnastics look like?
I have different ones now in my 50s. Um, yeah, I had them really intensely in my 20s and 30s, and they did persist, but now I don't have them anymore. Um, I left the sport without much resolution. That was really hard. I essentially unraveled and just sort of faded away. I didn't leave in triumph. I didn't even really leave in defeat. I just fell apart and couldn't do it anymore. And so I would have this nightmare. Well, one, I'd have weigh-in nightmares, which is terrible.
Oh,
Yeah, terrible weigh-in nightmares. Like when I was pregnant, like my coach for I've been pregnant 4 times. So that was always, I think other people have dreams about being naked in class or,
yeah, yeah.
show. My anxiety dream was being weighed in at work or something like that. But I would have this dream. I remember it very distinctly where the head of USA Gymnastics from when I was doing it would call me and he would say, I know you haven't been in the gym in a while, but there's this competition coming and we need you for it.
Oh,
And so you have a year to get ready. You can do it. But like I'm like 30, right? And I try and I can't do anything. I want to because it's like they want me back. It's like validation, but then I can't deliver.
yeah. Hmm.
So it kind of is all my anxieties of not being good enough and wanting to please and then failing.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't have it anymore. Thank goodness. I'm 56. So
That's good. What would you recommend that a teacher or a family member do when they see a child, not their own child, is being pushed? They sense that uh, something is getting out of balance with a kid.
that's interesting. I mean, presumably, if you're observing this, you're a parent in the same club with the same coach. I think it's hard to intervene if there's a parent that's present, and you don't want to be monkeying in everyone's business all the time.
Mhm.
But I also think parents can create there's a pretty tight community of parents on particular teams. And I think it's fair to say to the parent, your son doesn't seem like himself lately. Is everything okay?
That's a good
Um,
neutral way of opening
because
the
it might,
conversation.
maybe the parent's not paying attention. Maybe the parent's pushing the kid really hard, but maybe that triggers something in the parent. I
Mhm.
think it's a very sticky wicket to go directly to the coach and to intervene in that relationship unless you suspect actual abuse. If you suspect actual abuse, then you should report it to Safe Sport or the authorities, local authorities, Child Protective Services. Then I think um, you have to. That's your obligation. And that actually is one of the things that Safe Sport established is that anybody involved before Safe Sport was initiated, coaches were not considered mandatory reporters. So if a coach suspected that there was a pedophile on his staff, he was not required to report that to anyone, like a doctor or social worker. Now, a coach or anybody working in that orbit of youth sports is considered a mandatory reporter. So if they don't report it, they can be criminally held liable later. So, but I mean, my policy, if I ever suspected real physical abuse, if there's bruises, um, I think you go right to Child Protective Services.
Mhm. Well, it's a lot to think about and be aware of, and, whether your own child or someone you love is in ballet or in mathematics trying to get a scholarship, a musician who has to practice all the time, a football player, and you're concerned about head injuries. These are tremendously important things to have wisdom about, and, I hope you read Chalked Up by Jen Sey. And Jen, would you come back in another segment here and talk with us about what you're doing now with XXXY Athletic Wear, a new fashion brand that you've courageously started? And we're so happy to be learning from you.
Well, thank you for having me. I'd love to come back.
Subscribe and review Conversation Balloons on your favorite podcast platform. Find me at leahfarish.com and on Instagram at LEAHFARISH. This episode is brought to you by the Herzog Foundation. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Herzog Foundation.